Are human beings and their activities destroying the planet? What does science really say about the impact of human beings on the Earth's climate? Find out next on this edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives. Here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters, where your program on the right to life, on the culture that has emanated from that singular idea that each of us are given by our Creator our lives, that our lives are unique, and that the government has a responsibility to protect our lives, that to assure these rights, governments are instituted among men, is what our founder said. So the right to life is the first of the natural rights given to us by our God, by our Creator. And our program is listened to on Christian stations and on Conservative Talk. If you think I'm going out of bounds in talking about that, I assure you, if you're in the United States of America, pull out any kind of money out of your pocket, a dollar bill or a coin. And our nation is built on the idea that there is a God. And we didn't put ourselves here. We have a Creator. And that just laws must be held accountable to our Creator. So that's a foundational premise, and the foundational premise that has allowed our individual freedoms in this nation is that every life has been made by our Creator and granted these inalienable rights. And because we have a right to be alive, because we're unique, science has backed it up, by the way. Science tells us your cells, every cell in your body, cries out with your unique genetic structure that you're a unique human being. So we are looking at a battle of ideas now that wants to challenge that premise for our culture, that wants to challenge the premise that there's a higher law governing government, and that government needs to be held accountable to those higher standards. In this program, we're going to explore some of these ideas. Every episode of Life Matters, we go in depth on a particular aspect of this battle of ideas. And I focus on areas that I find a lot of pro-life people don't understand. And areas where a lot of people think, well, I'm not part of the right to life movement, when in fact they really are. If you like common sense, if you believe that the laws of nature and of nature's God, if you think objective reality should be our standard of judgment for passing laws, you're very likely pro-life, even if you don't think yourself so. As you look at these issues, the fact is that the laws no longer protect the vulnerable innocent. Before 1973, every state across this nation had laws that said the child in the womb is a human baby, and the laws are going to protect that human baby. Roe versus Wade overturned all of those laws, and that's why we're living in this cultural confusion right now. And I promise you, as Roe is overturned itself and states are free to start protecting the innocent, you're going to see a huge culture battle. We want to prepare you for that battle. This battle of ideas is very real. Today's in-depth analysis is of something in the news right now, and that is radical environmentalism. Now, you might think it's far away. I have to tell you that radical environmentalism is an idea that's being exploited on our sense that we want to be accountable. I love nature. I love a clean environment. But radical environmentalism has infiltrated our culture and carries with it a disdain for human lives, that somehow overpopulation and people themselves are the problem. We're going to explain how people have now been killed by radical environmentalists. But you weren't told that by the popular media. We're going to talk about understanding this issue and how to be in focus so that you can be an advocate for the vulnerable innocent in our culture.
Life Matters continues after this.
They say sunlight is the best disinfectant. Did you know that California has a law in the books that says you need to protect babies born alive in the course of an abortion? But that law is simply ignored. The current legislature and Governor Newsom's administration support all abortions all the time. And they simply do not examine or regulate the practice, even though our tax dollars pay for it. We need to shine a light on this cover-up of the abortion industry in our state. Go to californiaprolife.org and click on the Light of Day Project. We need the facts about late-term abortion to be examined and made known. We need the government doing its job to protect lives. We need the light of day on this. Go to californiaprolife.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. I told you that we're going to talk about environmentalism and specifically radical environmentalism, but it's actually being sold as a benign thing. And it sounds benign. Everybody wants clean air. Everybody wants clean water. We're not opposed to that. But what radical environmentalism does is it carries with it a deeper message, and that is that mankind is a problem because mankind is a carbon-based life form, and the carbon footprint of every individual brings with it a problem for Mother Earth, that human beings are the problem. We have talked about this in the sense of overpopulation before with some of the world's experts on overpopulation. Stephen Mosher of the Population Research Institute was our guest in episode 67. If you want to go back to the podcast page, if you're listening on radio, go to the podcast page for Life Matters. And Stephen Mosher, who is an expert on China, he's the man who personally revealed the forced abortion policies in China and has come back and is an amazing man. He's come back to the United States, and he is the head of the Population Research Institute. Overpopulation is a myth, and yet it's being used routinely in our schools. It's being taught by our culture to encourage the idea that human beings are a problem. And somehow if we eliminate human beings, if we limit population, then things will be so much better. Now remember, this is a battle of ideas. And you know me, you know that language matters. Population is a word that refers to people. Population is a mass noun, and so it's easy to think it's a thing. But population refers to your population. You are personally part of the population. And if we can get rid of you, well, then we'll be lowering the population. There's less of a problem now for Mother Earth. And it's a very simplistic, and yet there's a lot of people who buy into the simplistic analysis that we have man-made global warming, that there's overpopulation, and that something needs to be done about it, and that the environment is first and foremost what needs to be our highest value. So radical environmentalism is very much with us, and I have a personal concern in this. I actually lost an acquaintance, a friend. I didn't know him really well, but I did know Gil Murray from my work in the Sacramento State Capitol. I was a lobbyist there for many years. And Gil Murray was also a lobbyist for the Forestry Association. And he got a package on his desk addressed to the president. He had just become president of the Forestry Association, and that package was from the Unabomber. And again, if you remember the Unabomber in the 1990s, the press was looking for him. Didn't know who he was, but what was very clear from his manifesto, what common sense people could see, is he was a radical environmentalist. Radical. And if people read the manifesto, they found that in many places he quoted directly from Al Gore's writings about saving the planet. And so this is a very common idea that impacts how people view other people. So radical environmentalism is a very, very dangerous ideology. And it exploits a common sense ideology, and that is we want to take care of nature. I enjoy nature. I consider myself an amateur naturalist. I enjoy going out in the woods and partaking of nature. It's very, very enjoyable. I also was involved in the lumber industry years ago on the north coast of California. Now, immediately people may react to that, and you know why they react? Our culture somehow has taught you, if you're reacting, that means you've been culturally taught that, the lumber industry is terrible. It's not. The lumber industry, they're dealing with America's renewable resource. The lumber industry plants more trees than it fells. The lumber industry is a tremendous benefit and has been to the American Northwest for a long time and reached into Northern California. There's very few mills now in the north of California and in Washington and in Oregon. Those mills are being closed, mostly by environmental regulations. And the problem is what's replacing that building material are plastics, things that are even worse. They're not improving the environment in their march towards progress. But the lumber industry is not the evil that you've been told it is. And yet Gil Murray gave up his life because he worked in the lumber industry. And so radical environmentalism is very much alive. But there's aspects of the news right now In 2019, there were some very serious killings in El Paso, Texas, and also in Ohio. And I want to talk about those very briefly because you probably did not get all the information about those shooters and what was motivating them. Now, first, I want to say this, that it's very clear that anyone who kills other people in that way has something wrong with them. And it's pretty regularly the fact that these types of people are on medication for emotional issues. And so these drugs can be very, very dangerous. But there's also deeper issues that you were not told about. The El Paso shooter, Patrick Crusius. Now, he was an interesting guy. And the Dayton shooter, Connor Betts, was also an interesting guy. They were on polar opposites in one sense because Crusius appears to be a right-wing person, and Connor Betts from Dayton appeared to be a left-winger. But once again, you have to look deeper. That while it seems that Crusius, he does mention Donald Trump, and he says, I've had these ideas long before Donald Trump came along. But he gets even more specific because in addition to simply killing people because they're Hispanic, he says that the scores of people had to die in order to make the earth more sustainable. And so he's not quite what you would call your typical right-wing extremist. He was asserting it was overpopulation of this particular population. If you know Planned Parenthood, they actually, Margaret Sanger said it was overpopulation of certain races that needed to be brought down. The shooter in Dayton, Ohio, his ideology was one that actually supported gun control, but he himself felt that certain people had to die and that he would do so because it would help the earth. A manifesto which happened to coincide with Al Gore's manifesto, The Inconvenient Truth is what it was called. In the manifesto that has been attributed to the Dallas area shooter, he said, the environment is getting worse by the year. Most of y'all are just too stubborn to change your lifestyle. So the next logical step is to get rid of enough people. Then our way of life can become more sustainable. So I'm bringing this up to point out that mass shooters aren't either Republican or Democrat. They are basically ideologues. And sometimes they're just straight out kooks. But there is an ideology out there, and it's accepted by many, and that is the ideology of environmental extremism. It won't call itself extreme, but it does consider human beings to be a problem. And when we allow this idea to gain hold, we are allowing the wrong ideas to have ascendancy, because human beings are not the problem. Human beings are the answer. The answer to society's problems is not killing people or having fewer of them. In fact, many of the great inventions and the answers of our time have come from unlikely sources. George Washington Carver was an adopted black child of slaves. He was an extraordinary individual, and aside from peanut butter and other inventions, was just an extraordinary man. Oprah, I understand that Oprah was the product of rape. She herself had been raped, and her child did survive, and she kept her child. The child died later because of other circumstances. We don't know how someone's origin might impact their life, or we cannot somehow say that their life is insignificant and should be dismissed. And yet there is a groupthink attitude. It's not an individual reason. They don't say, well, that person's deformed, that person's bad. In groupthink, they take whole categories. And for environmentalism, the category known as mankind is often viewed as a problem that needs to be reduced and diminished and eliminated. And to do so, they have justified the use of abortion, yes, the use of population control methodology, and the dismissal of what a human being really is. A human being is a unique creation. And you think I'm talking religion here, I'm actually talking political science, because it was American founders that said that we are creations. We are given gifts by our Creator, and that the job of government is to help assure us to keep and use these gifts. That's the reason we have governments established. And so with this current battle of ideas regarding environmental extremism, be on the lookout. Watch out that you not be drawn into a casual attitude towards your fellow human beings. The fact is that we are not living in desperate times. As much as the media will pound that into your head, we are not destroying the planet through global warming. Please listen to our other podcast on the global warming hype. We are actually facing a challenge of ideas, and folks are trying to push you with false ideas into accepting false ideology that diminishes and dismisses human life. When we come back, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about how you can be involved in asserting the positive aspects of human life and advocate for laws that will protect and respect human lives.
Life Matters continues after this.
You know, you're pretty amazing. The reason I can say that is America's founders said that about you. That's right. They said that every human being is created by a creator and given rights by that creator. Those rights are not given by the government. It's the government's job to protect those rights. And the very first and most important is the right to be alive, the right to life. If you want to be involved in the national effort, go to nrlc.org.
Do you have a car you aren't using anymore? You can donate your car or boat, mobile home, trailer, or motorcycle, even property, to the California Pro-Life Council and get the highest amount possible in a tax deduction. Our donation program doesn't just turn around and dump the car. Our volunteer team of experts gets the car in its best reasonable shape and then sells it at auction to the highest bidder. You get the best tax deduction, and California Pro-Life gets the highest amount that it can to assist us in reaching Californians for life.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. Yeah, we've been talking about environmentalism, and I am a bit of an amateur naturalist. I love nature. I think it's a wonderful thing. And environmentalism seeks to exploit this love of nature that we have, and all of us who desire to have clean air and live in a clean environment. There are ideas underneath that are now very much alive and are warring in our culture, that are taught in our schools to our children about overpopulation, which is a myth, which has been proven to be a myth for now almost centuries. Malthus is the first to talk about overpopulation, and Malthus was disproved long ago. He wrote in the late 1700s. And so we're looking at ideas that are designed to bring about political results, and those political results often are at the cost of human lives. Amazingly, that human lives are to be disposed of. We saw that in China. China still has that worldview. You may think that China, because they are involved in buying and selling and that they're capitalists. No, they're still a Marxist state. And in Marxism, human beings are things. They're things to be disposed of in a Marxist worldview. And the Marxist worldview has extended into the free world, into the academic world, into the media world, that somehow this is a good thing to control human population. Let me talk a little bit. We talked about those who have been killed. Again, my personal acquaintance with a gentleman who was killed by the Unabomber, and the Unabomber celebrated killing because it was killing a forester, and those foresters are evil. Forestry is actually a very noble profession, and it benefits the planet. It actually benefits the environment. There's more trees planted than are actually taken out. But more to the point, this notion of global warming, and we'll have a whole other program on global warming. I want to touch on Greenland just for a second, because I like Greenland. I've flown over it several times, and it's fascinating. The mountains are amazing as you fly over Greenland. What you should know about Greenland in terms of human history is Greenland right now is under an ice shelf. That's true. But the ice shelf has grown and expanded and grown and expanded over the eons. That the notion of man-made global warming is the problem. Global warming and climate change has been with us for eons. It's part of how climate really works. And an honest climatologist will tell that to you, that the ice ages are still with us. And so this notion that, it's human beings that cause that. Well, the Vikings lived in Greenland in the Middle Ages, in the 1200s, and then in 1315 or so, they had to move their colonies out because the ice cap was expanding. that ice shelf was expanding, the glacier, and they couldn't live there anymore. There was climate change in 1315, and that's in history. And it wasn't because of the warming fires they had in their fireplaces. And they didn't have internal combustion engines, and their sled dogs weren't breathing too hard, and there wasn't any cattle farts that was causing the problem. It wasn't caused by human beings. It's the nature of the earth itself to have climate change. And yet, you're not being taught that by the media. I have in front of me the Guardian newspaper. I read occasionally. It's a left-wing newspaper. You need to know most left-wing journalists like the Guardian. And the Guardian has a special regular publication. It's a green update, and it's just chock-a-block full of quote-unquote news stories explaining why mankind is the problem, that man is a problem. And this is a very bad idea because it's a seedbed for dismissing other human beings. And this seedbed of thinking is false. It's faulty at its very core. Mankind is not a problem. Mankind, if anything, brings answers. And some of the best answers that have been brought, I think of somebody like George Washington Carver, who he was a black man, an adopted black man, son of a slave, an extraordinarily creative individual. The most extraordinary gifts come from the least expected people. Everyone has value, and to say that, no, we need to control the population because mankind itself is a problem, that idea has been running abroad. And if you aren't willing to challenge it, you're going to lose in this battle of ideas. If you're not willing to assert the intrinsic value and dignity of every human life, then your battle will be lost. Stand for life, because life matters.
Wordsworth here. Get your Wordsworth.
We're at that portion of our program we call Wordsworth. You know, just like at a baseball game, you can't know the players without a program. And so it is in the battle of ideas. Unless you actually understand the meaning of the words being used, you can come to very wrong conclusions about those ideas. Today is going to be a word you're all familiar with, and that's the word choice. Choice is often used by abortion advocates as a term to symbolize abortion and to represent abortion, but it doesn't talk about abortion. In fact, it specifically does not refer to the abortion itself or the act itself or what happens in an abortion. It's what's known as reification in semantics. It's making it a different thing. And so it changes entirely the meaning of the debate and the meaning of the context in which it exists. As you know, choice refers to the option of making a decision. But what's very important is what is that decision? The question needs to be, what is it that's being decided? If the law says I can't steal my neighbor's car and I desire my neighbor's Cadillac, well, that choice has been denied me. I have had my choice denied. In fact, most of society, if you think about it, there are many choices that we deny people in society, and for very, very good reason. Before 1973, aborting human babies in the U.S. was a decision that the laws and society thought was very, very dangerous and very bad, obviously for the child, but also the mother. But right now we're talking about choice and what it really means. One of the things we have to look at is in the word choice, you need to make sure if you're being confronted in a situation that, well, I'm pro-choice, or you're just anti-choice. Well, choice for what? You know, choice is used referring to school choice. Maybe you favor school choice. Perhaps you'd like to send your kids to a school of your choosing and not to the government schools. Well, then you're pro-choice, aren't you? And so it's really a discussion about abortion, and make sure that you remind the person you're talking to that the specific is about abortion. Here's the other real danger you'll find in this battle of ideas when people don't think about the meaning of words and they'll start using the words in this battle. And in so doing, they surrender. And that is when a friend of yours, an acquaintance, someone you know should have better sense, and they say, yeah, well, you know, I'm pro-choice. And you ask them, well, why? And they say, well, what if there's rape? Or what if there's incest? Or what if there's some problem? I think we should have abortion for those circumstances. Well, you know what? They're not really pro-choice, because They're outlining, and the radical feminist movement has outlined this many places. They're outlining the reasons they think there should be abortions. But if you're limiting abortion, then in the eyes of feminists, you're not really pro-choice. They want to have abortion legal for any reason or no reason in particular. It doesn't need to be justified in the minds of abortion advocates. There's no need to justify the abortion. I just want to choose it. That's what's meant by choice, that there be no limit to abortion. So your friend might say, oh, I'm pro-choice, but they're thinking of very narrow reasons. If you take abortion for rape, for incest, for life of the mother, for severe fetal deformity, the normal litany of hard cases, that accounts for relatively few abortions that take place, less than 2%. The vast majority of abortions are done for social reasons. They're done because somebody just wants it or feels pressured by somebody else usually. But it's not being done for the hard cases that we always hear about. When you have to give a reason for an abortion, believe it or not, you're not being pro-choice. You're giving reasons for justifying the abortion. So it isn't just that choice is being used to misrepresent. It's being used to justify unlimited abortion, anytime, for any reason, or no reason in particular. So it's very important that you understand in this battle of ideas, when you're talking about abortion, to use the term choice, it carries with it a whole world of meaning that's being used to justify things that you may not agree with. And it's very important to clarify and bring clarity to the true meaning of the word. And that's choice for today. Other days we'll talk about a lot of these other terms that are intentionally misused in order to get people to come to conclusions they normally wouldn't come to. Life Matters exists to equip you. It's actually not just about the abortion issue. Life Matters is about life itself and your role in protecting life and, in fact, enjoying life. If you're not speaking up for others and there's something going wrong, you're not going to enjoy life. We want to help you understand why you should care about the issues of life, how you can effectively speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Our job is to equip you for this battle of ideas and for standing for the culture of life.
If you have questions or comments for Life Matters, call 800-924-2490. Give us your name and the town you're calling from and a quick question or comment. Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. Wherever you are in the nation, you can find out more at National Right to Life. You can find vital pro-life information and also find the access to your state and local Right to Life affiliate. Get informed and get involved.